Welcome to Media Makers Spotlight from women in film and video in Washington, D.C. We bring you conversations with industry professionals for behind the screens, insight and inspiration.
Welcome to Media Makers Spotlight Host Special. In honor of Valentine's Day this year, our topic is romantic comedy movies. I'm your host, Sandra Abrams, and joining me to swoon over this genre are the other hosts of Media Makers Spotlight, Tara.
Hi.
And Candice.
Hey, everybody.
If you've listened to our host specials, you will know we normally do not agree on other genres. But for romantic comedies, we love this category. Am I right?
No,
yes?
I don't. No.
No. Tara's saying no, she doesn't agree. Candice?
I love a lot of genres. This is one I enjoy as well, yes.
All right, so our first question, I figured, let's finish this sentence. When I go to the movies and watch a romantic comedy, I feel or it reminds me of Candice?
Well, I don't always go to the movies for them anymore with all the streaming, but I do, and over the years I have. I don't know. I think for me, rom-coms, they're sort of like sitcoms in the sense that like you know what you're getting and you know you're going to get a happy resolution at the end of it. So it's like a light snack. It's not too intense. It's fun. It's going to have that, characters finding love, and because it's a rom-com, it's funny. It's going to be comedic as well. So I find them like a little dessert almost, but like a known thing where you know what you're going to get. So they feel comfortable, I guess, comfortable and happy.
That's the same for me. I know that there's going to be a happy ending, so I look forward to that. What about you, Tara?
That's a really nice way of putting it. I rarely enjoy them.
Why? What is it that you don't enjoy?
Because it's always the same. And I'm like,
yeah,
get creative, people.
Yeah. Well, it's the formula. I mean, but the formula can be really, it's that whole, there's only 7 stories or whatever. I mean, I know that.
And I think that's the point is my thing with romantic comedies tend to be that, yes, you have the same ending, usually a happy ending. But the reason why I like thrillers or I like a lot of like gangster films like Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas and stuff like that. And well, that's based on true stories. But still, it's the way that the story is told and the conflicts that arise, right? And a lot of romantic comedies, particularly in more American or Western ones, stay the same. They're like, almost like the books too.
Yeah.
Any book, you're like, I wonder how they're going to end up like enemies turning into lovers. You're like, oh yeah. So that's why I just wish that there was a little bit of difference. And I have a couple that I do really like.
Yeah. But to me, that's also like that predictability makes them like the chocolate chip cookie, right? So you can have a really cool meal or a really interesting new flavor. I love almost all genres because they're all so different. And so at least, rom-coms I find enjoyable when you're just like, you know what? I just want like the mac and cheese or the thing where you're getting, So that's I think the predictability is actually one of the selling points for me on those. Yeah.
And a lot of people, and why it keeps getting made because they know a lot of people like that comfort.
Mm-hmm. That's true. And I want to pick up on something that Candice pointed out was the formula. There's key elements that go on, with them. And I don't know about you, but I kind of put the list together as like, it's usually like around Christmas time. It usually involves a wedding. There's usually a beach. There's mistaken identity, chaos, and there's usually some evil person like that's trying to break up the couple. And I'm thinking in Crazy Rich Asian, there was Nick's mother, Eleanor, trying to break them up. So there's always some evil person. I don't know. Oh, and there's beach scene. I was thinking of Forgetting Sarah Marshall. So I don't know about you guys, but those are kind of like the key formulas that I see.
Formulas within them. Yeah, like Vacation or, there always has to be, there has to be some conflict, something that's almost going to have them not get together so that they can get together at the end and it'll be satisfying. And we all know that Sandra absolutely loves the Christmas time rom-coms. I mean, I guess Christmas movies, they're sort of rom-coms. Are they comedic enough to be? I guess they are a subcategory of rom-coms. They're all
Right.
definitely like heavy on
Yeah.
the cheesy rom.
Yeah.
Right. And this is so the Women in Film and Video, our parent organization, just had the movie club, and on Monday night they were talking about Christmas films. And a lot of those Christmas films were rom-coms. The Holiday, The Last Holiday with Queen Latifah and LL Cool J. There was The Best Man. There were some other ones. I'm not thinking of them, but right. Yeah.
But I mean, if you're just saying that there's some like a romantic plot in a film, that's like 95% of films. They usually put some sort of relationship in there, and then because it's a very human thing. We all want to find connection and to find people in
Die
love.
Hard.
And yeah, exactly. I mean,
Die Hard, there's not a Christmas movie.
It is.
Die Hard is a Christmas movie. We've determined that it is. Yeah.
But it's
Yes,
also
we're
a romance
referring back
movie.
to a previous host special if anybody wants to know. So
Yeah.
But it's still a romantic love story because it's a husband and a wife and they had a
True.
fight. And
Spoiler alert, they get together in the end. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah,
well, what is it? Do you like the beach scene? Do you like it when they travel somewhere?
no.
No.
Maybe.
Okay.
I just like if it's clever, if it's well acted, if it's, if the funny part of it is in there. And yes, they are formulaic, but they're not all exactly the same. So I like when it's a fun and interesting, like new dynamic or
I think the chemistry is what really makes
chemistry
a really
huge.
good rom-com. If you can really buy that, I can see them as a couple, whether they are supposed to be really lovey-dovey or if they're supposed to be like, you're driving me crazy.
Right.
But you can tell that they love each other. And that is because if you just see it all the same and you're like, yeah, whatever. And that's where I get annoyed. So yeah, I think the chemistry between the main love story actors, the ones that we're supposed to really root for, that's what I really get drawn to.
Chemistry is key in any film.
Well,
but particularly in these things.
Right.
Sometimes I don't see the chemistry. Like I saw the chemistry in Jennifer Lopez and Matthew McConaughey in The Wedding Planner. But
That's a good
Sandra
one. I do like that
Bullock
one.
and Ryan Reynolds, two stars that I love, I didn't really see that chemistry in that film.
In The Proposal?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they only did one together.
It wasn't as much chemistry, but I like both of them as well. So I just found it kind of a fun, different thing as well. Because I mean, she was older than him. I hate when any movie puts like a really stupid scene somewhere in there. Like I know this is going to be a personal attack on a film, but I think there was the Matthew McConaughey, Sarah Jessica Parker like failure to launch movie. And it was like almost cute. And then they put in some like a dumb animated lizard biting a finger or something. And I was like, why? Why do you need that like weird slapstick that's in the wrong, like, it wasn't even a tonal thing. It was just putting in a weird CGI thing and took me right out of it. I was like, why did you even need to do that? Like, just cut that. That was terrible. So that's the thing that I always hate about that.
The Proposal, it's like when Sandra and Betty White have to do that weird dance.
The dance in the woods. Yeah, that's what makes me think of it. And some people enjoy that. It's funny. It was, to me, tolerable, but my least favorite part of it. And then, but not as bad as I have seen in other films. Yeah. So it's, you can't win them all. Some people love it.
The silly moments where he's sleeping on the floor and then the family's coming in and there's parents that she's like, what is that? She's like, get in the bed. She's like, what is that? He's like, it's morning. She's like, what's that mean? And that's funny. That's a funny moment. So.
But Sandra Bullock really had a lot of chemistry with Hugh Grant in the movie 2 Weeks Notice.
That was a really cute one. Yeah, I really liked that one.
And I could definitely see that. No, I highly recommend it, especially when she's ordering the Chinese food. That's a theme throughout the film that I could relate to. So,
okay.
But one of the things that you mentioned, the silliness, it gets back to, there's in the 1930s, they didn't really say romantic comedies, the 30s and 40s. They talked about how, films are screwball comedies. So then you thought about Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn and Bringing Up Baby. There was also It Happened One Night with Clark Gable and Colette Colbert. Those are two famous, like we would call them rom-coms, but they didn't necessarily call them back then. But what's really do you think there's any real difference between screwball comedies and romantic comedies?
I think they're like the parents to the romantic comedies or the ancestors. But I do wanted to, did you guys know about the influence of It Happened One Night with men's fashion?
No. So
remember
tell us about
vaguely
that.
hearing
Give us
something.
that trivia. That sounds
I
good.
love this. I have this in my notes. And also, side note, I'm doing a podcast on Carol Lombard, who
was married to Clark Gable.
the Clark Gable from It What Happened One Night, but she was like the Sandra Bullock of that time of screwball comedies,
Mhm.
To Be or Not to Be, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. It was not about assassins. And for It Happened One Night, which is what, 1930?
30, 90, 32 or 33, about that.
Yeah.
Around there.
So there's a scene where Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert are getting dressed to go to bed. And they only had a certain amount of time to get the scene done. And they realized, they're getting undressed. And they were like, oh, there's not enough time for Clark to have an undershirt. So he'll just wear a shirt, take off the shirt, and he's shirtless. Because usually men were wearing undershirts, right?
Mhm.
So they're like, fine, it's just a time saver. The pricing for undershirts went drastically down after the film came out, and it never went up until the show The OC, when the lead
Wow.
character
Yeah.
was seen wearing always a undershirt.
Mhm.
Then that's when the rise of purchasing undershirts.
Well, that's just
And
the power of like entertainment and celebrity on fashion.
that and like the influence of something like these,
Mhm.
well, we would call them rom-coms, but these screwball comedies and then of course It Happened One Night is it is the first film to win all the big major Oscars, but one of the few to win all the major ones.
Wow.
And it's one of my favorites for sure. And a lot of rom-coms have copied that. I mean, it's Chasing Liberty with Mandy Moore and Matthew Good.
Well, to bring that up, like a lot of rom-coms are the classic stories just recycled a bunch. Like there's 10 Things I Hate About You is Taming of the Shrew. Like, there's a lot of Shakespeare that gets pulled in and a lot of classic things. But Sandra, what you had asked before about like how would you categorize this or how do you think with the categories? Personally, I think it's like just a big Venn diagram and a little bit of like a square rectangle thing where, the definition covers a few of them and you can be screwball, slapstick, whatever comedy. But if you have comedy, you can be horror comedy, you could be dramedy, you could be rom-com, like there's all these mashups that we create in the genre names themselves because there's elements to all of these things in a lot of movies because there's all these different flavors and notes in life. And that's what our stories are about. It's not 100% one thing. So, I think personally, I just see it as this like massive Venn diagram.
That's true. They all have something in common, which is at the center as a couple that you're rooting for. You want to see them succeed.
And
that's
one thing that
definitely true.
I find
Mhm.
I see a lot in modern rom-coms is the montage at the beginning. There's always like a montage to catch you up to like say it's a female lead, you see like what her life is like, and it's kind of like you're seeing, oh, she's single, there's this not working out, that not working out or whatever, and then you kind of meet up with the the 30 minutes in the like main first plot twist or whatever when they like meet who's going to be who they end up with. So I always think that's kind of funny that there's a lot of montages in this genre. I mean, there's always like montages in like action films for like training montages and whatnot. But I feel like there's a rom-com montage that's a bit of a commonality there between a lot of them. And sometimes I feel like I'm stuck in my rom-com montage, just like waiting for some big plot twist to come.
Right. Well, that was something. There's a character in The Holiday, and Kate Winslet's character is living in Cameron Diaz's house, and
Hmm.
next door, living to her, is Eli Wallach's character, and he's talking about romantic comedies, and he talks about
No, you
the
mean
elderly man, Eli Wallach, I think, is the elderly
Jack
man.
Black? Oh, that guy. Right. The
Yeah,
older
yeah,
guy. Well, then
the
that's
older
where you
guy.
get all the. And he talks about the women with gumption. I
Right, and
love that.
and
Yeah.
he says to her, these romantic, it's all about meet cute, and
Hmm.
that's exactly when you were talking. It made me think of, how these people meet cute, that type of
Yeah.
thing.
That is a
Um,
classic. Yeah. I mean,
mhm.
we still use that term. I mean, I use
Yeah.
that term still to this day. It's like a meet cute is, the funny or interesting circumstance in which you
Is that
connect with a
from
new
that
person.
film?
It's like from way back in early cinema. It's
Oh.
like the original like terminology for when sort of like the two main characters meet. And you always want to have it be sort of interesting, like, oh, they reached for the same last croissant at a bakery, or there's
Mm.
always some type of thing that has them meet in a cute way. So that's their meet cute. And we're also seeing from another of our producers, Brandon, who is giving us some stats, that term was accidentally coined by German-American film director Ernst Lubitsch to describe the
Oh,
encounter between
he's
Claudette
from.
Colbert and Gary Cooper in the
Oh.
1938 film Bluebeard's Eighth Wife.
Oh.
Wow. All right.
And
Well,
then
good.
the earliest known use of the term in print was in the 1950s in the New York Times Book Review. Interesting.
All right.
All right. So we
There's a
got our.
factoid for you guys. We're trying
Yes,
to
that's
try
right.
to give
That's
you
what we plan
information
to
as
tell you
well as
about
just our
great
opinions.
movies, rom-coms, and giving
Yeah.
you some good trivia here.
Trivia.
So we know about
Mhm.
men's T-shirts. Sales plummeted after Clark Gable, and now we know about the term "meet cute." But one of the things that did, Candice, you mentioned Shakespeare. A lot of these things harken back to some of his stories, and one was the story of Twelfth Night. And
Mhm.
there's Viola, her brother Sebastian. They get shipwrecked on an island, and she falls in love with Duke. Duke falls in love with Contessa. The Contessa falls in love with Viola because Viola is dressed like a man. There's all these misunderstandings and misidentification. And it made me think of the Billy Wilder film, Some Like It Hot, with Tony Curtis, Jack Lemmon, Marilyn Monroe. And again, it starts off bad because they witness the St. Valentine's Day massacre.
Mhm.
So in Chicago,
Well,
they
don't give
dress
too
like
much
women.
away.
They
I
dress
haven't
like
seen it
women
yet.
and get on a
Still in
train,
there.
and what happens? But but just so you know, like
Yeah.
for that film, Marilyn Monroe actually she won the Golden Globe
Oh, wow.
for
Oh.
Best Actress in a Musical or Comedy of that movie.
Mhm.
So if Candice, you said you haven't seen it, that's
I
definitely
know.
right up there. You've got to go.
It's
You've got to
been on
see
my
that.
list for ages. Like I've seen so many films, as you all know. I've studied film. You have to see so many. I've seen a lot because there's so many. You can't see everything, and that's one of those classics that has fallen through the cracks. Where I always have it on my to watch list, but then there's three more other recent ones or something that I end up watching and not getting around to that one. But
But there's
I will
also
definitely watch it before. I'll make a point of watching it before this episode airs. Because we are recording in the end of 2024, and this will be out in, as we said, for Valentine's Day.
But I have a question about that. I have seen it a while ago, but I remember it was always considered having one of the sexiest love scenes. And then I would watch it, and I watched it. I'm like, there's no
Maybe
sex
for the
scene.
time. I don't know.
I think it's for the time.
I do
what
remember
love scene?
doing actually a report in college about the evolution of the rating system. And so I remember, I don't remember everything, but I know there was some factoids about, what they allowed to be showed at different times. And maybe they had
And what
like
they
a
considered.
silhouette or something. Yeah. And so it might have been maybe more risque for the time, or I'm not sure. But what I know of Twelfth Night, I know from the end of Shakespeare in Love. Because I haven't read the play or seen the other movie. So
isn't it She's the Man too? Isn't it?
Oh yeah, I've
That's
seen
Amanda
that.
Burns. Right.
Bynes, yeah,
Bynes.
Amanda Bynes, yeah.
Yeah, with Channing.
Bynes,
I've seen
right,
that,
right.
and Channing Tatum,
Yeah.
one of the earlier
But I was
ones
wondering
of
if
him.
Sandra knew about that.
The ratings.
Or
Well,
no.
there's the particular scene when they're on the boat, and Tony Curtis is playing that he's the owner of the yacht, and they're on the boat, and there's a couch scene.
Oh, okay. For us, it's like nothing, isn't it? But I guess at
Nowadays
the
it
time.
is.
Yeah.
But
But
all right, carry on. Yeah.
I want to talk about, speaking of all these different movies and the times, I wanted to talk about now all these films, they talk a lot about blockbuster. So speaking of Some Like It Hot, I think it wasn't made but for a couple of million and ended up making $49 million at the, I think, domestic box office. But meanwhile, now movies cost so much more. For example, I read that Crazy Rich Asians cost $30 million to make, but it made $232 million worldwide. So astounding, amount of money. And I know that Brandon, our producer, had helped us out with finding out some of these costs. But other films, if you think about it, Coming to America, Eddie Murphy, that was made in 1988. It made like 130 million. But at the time, that was a lot of money for a movie, domestic sales to make.
Would that be considered a rom-com, Coming to America?
Yes.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
It is considered, like it's cross
And not just a comedy.
genre. Yeah.
He
Because
gets
it
the
brought
girl in the end.
And the whole reason is
and there's a
because he's
wedding.
looking for a wife.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
But it was because it's an Eddie Murphy vehicle, like he was able to cross the audiences, I think. I just love how he's like, if I'm looking for a queen, we should go to Queens.
They probably have a bunch there, yeah.
I think the number one blockbuster was My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Oh, yeah, that changed a lot for indies in general, but that one, and that one is a good one.
Have I shared my little personal factoid of that movie? And okay,
let's hear.
Back in the day, I worked at the independent movie theater Landmark, those Landmark theaters. And I worked at one, and I was working there the summer that My Big Fat Greek Wedding came out. And we got to see like in real time it transcending from the indie sort of like what you can handle there. And we would have lines just like wrapping around the block. And so I remember when we were all like thrilled that it finally started going into like the bigger multiplexes to handle the crowds. But it was just such a crazy time. There was so much crowd control that I had to do. It's like this quiet theater, all these little independent films, just really art house kind of a chill vibe. And then that movie was just chaos. It was adorable. It was fun. It was a great time. I love it. I think it was worth all the hype. But yeah, I have that like personal, just a little bit of like PTSD about it, sort of. I'm like, ooh, yep. No, I remember when it became too big for indie theaters because I was in one.
Well, that movie only cost $5 million to make, and then it ended up making, I probably have this figure wrong, but domestically it did over $200,000. $200 million.
Ultimately, over 368 million worldwide. It's one of the top ones of the 21st century.
Right.
Yeah. And then it spawned like the sequel. I think the sequel was kind of cute, right? And then there was a third one, and I think the third one flopped.
I saw it.
I haven't seen the last one yet because it didn't look good.
They go to Greece. But I think this also proved with My Big Fat Greek Wedding, Crazy Rich Asians, and even to this point of Coming to America, there was this argument of like, well, people don't really want to hear these different diverse stories, or like the Greeks it's too specific, or Asians, like, will they even understand this or that? And it's proving the exact opposite. And the reason why we loved My Big Fat Greek Wedding is I'm not Greek, but I'm Iranian. And it was so relatable. Her being bullied as a kid, and like the whole family, meeting the whole family for this white boy, Ian. She's like, it's okay, I make lamb.
I know, I love that he doesn't eat meat. And she's like, oh, okay, then I'll just make lamb.
It's just such a great, and then there's a great scene in My Big Fat Greek Wedding 2 with the dad, and it's the Greek man, a Persian man, a Chinese man, and a Scottish man, and they just keep talking about whose ancestors did more for humanity. It's just so true.
Yeah.
And it was just such a beautiful thing. And then Crazy Rich Asians, It's true that I've never been to Singapore. I haven't really been to that side of the world yet, but
I was going to say yet for you. Yeah.
for all of us, I'm sure. But it was so important for so many people, and I could still relate to it.
Well, that is exactly the whole point of the diversity and inclusion of more stories, because not only are you seeing all these different perspectives and enjoying it, and they can still be really popular and they're not a hindrance, but then you can see those common threads that we all want love and connection. We all want, the human experience. And so I think the more you see all of the different, all the different people and experiences represented, you see the commonality for the human experience. And I think that's what's great about entertainment and films in general. I think personally is that, showing all these stories and finding out how we're all similar and how, all of that. So just a little
Yeah.
preachy thing.
No, it made me think of what Lin-Manuel Miranda said. Love is love, and that gets back to what I was the LBGTQ rom-coms.
Mhm.
People think, oh, well, they don't, people may not want to see that, but that's not necessarily true. So recently, Bros came out, and that it was one of the first gay romantic comedies by a major
Right.
studio that had an openly LGBTQ principal cast.
Mhm.
And a lot of people went to go see it because love is love, as you were saying, Candice.
Mhm. Yeah, it's so great. I mean, honestly, if it's funny and well written, I would bring it on. I'll see any version, And it's great to see that we are seeing more now. Finally, I mean, there's still a long way to go, but uh, representation and the diversity of the stories that we see, it is making some progress. So yay for that.
So we've talked a lot about the blockbuster films, but we haven't really talked about our favorites. And I started to make a list, and I was like, oh, and there's this one, and there's this one. So, for
Mhm.
example, I was talking to Sarah Barger, who is WIF's past president. I was talking to her the other night, and I was telling her that we were going to be having this for Valentine's Day as our host special. And she said, oh, you have to put this on the list. And film that I had not thought about was Serendipity with Kate Beckinsale and John Cusack. And then I started thinking about, oh yeah, and John Cusack was also in Say Anything. And then that sparked this, so I
High
thought
Fidelity
there's
is one
one
of my
right there.
favorites of him too.
Yes,
Yeah.
and another one. So you start to like, oh, okay, I like Four Weddings and a Funeral, When Harry Met Sally, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. It's
Oh, so
complicated,
much.
which
Yeah.
is a rom-com for a certain age. And then I was like, all right, wait
Oh,
a
I
minute.
loved
This
It's
list is getting
Complicated. That's
so
one of my
long.
favorites as well. Yeah, like I notoriously can't pick favorites for almost anything. I mean, I have just like maybe like a favorite season or a favorite time of day or something, but everything else I'm like, no, it depends, or there's too many. So I really can't pick favorites of anything. And so like
I
almost
have
all
them.
these that you list. Okay, Tara, if you have specific favorites, go for it. What
All
are
right,
your
go
favorites?
for it. Let's hear your
Let me get my
favorites,
list.
Tara.
Because you probably only have like 3 or 4 that you like of rom-coms, right?
Oh, you're nice. I have 2 rom-coms and 1
Zom-com, a zombie
is-
rom-com?
oh.
Because that sounds more your style.
Well, one is like a foreign film, Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow, which is an Italian film with Sophia Loren and which is, what is his name? I don't remember. Who cares?
Marcello Mastriano. Yeah.
Yes, because it's 3 short films. The first and the last one are rom-coms, and the middle is a drama,
Okay.
arguably. So that's one of mine.
Okay.
But I think these are my 2 favorites. One is Frankie and Johnny, which was a play, and then they made it into a film with Al Pacino and Michelle Pfeiffer, host Scarface. And it's really sweet. And they thought Michelle Pfeiffer shouldn't play it because she's too pretty, but she did a great job. I really liked it. And then the other one is IQ with the queen herself, Meg Ryan.
Is that
And I was
like one with Einstein in it?
Yes. And
Yeah,
she's
okay.
the niece of Einstein.
Yeah.
And she's engaged to, is it Stephen Fry? The
I've-
really tall.
I'm not sure. I've seen so
English
many movies
actor.
at this point. That was way back. So I was
Yeah,
like,
but
oh,
it's
yeah.
right. It's Stephen Fry. It's Frye, has the E at the end of his name.
Yes.
Mhm.
And Einstein
Right.
isn't crazy about him. And he meets a mechanic, Tim Robbins. And he tries to set her up with the mechanic. It's so sweet and it's so cute. So yeah, I just really like those.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Einstein, he's got that really great quote about relativity, where it's sort of like if you put your, with the relativity of time, it's sort of like if you put your hand on a hot stove for like 2 seconds, it could feel like an eternity. But if it's something to do with like kissing a girl or something, it could feel like I'm butchering the quote, but there's a cute quote that's attributed to Einstein.
Was that a TV show? Didn't they make some type of TV show with that name? All right,
called Relativity? I'm not sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Not offhand. But speaking of TV, when we were talking about doing this special, we were going to focus only on films. But then Sandra also mentioned like and TV, and I was like, wait, that's right. Is TV, like, are there rom-coms within TV? But now with all of these series and everything, there's very clearly ones that fit in, including some of the most recent ones, like the most recent big smash hit was like Nobody Wants This. That's 100% a rom-com.
And it's nominated for a Golden Globe as well.
It was so cute. I'm glad there's another season coming of that one. It was very cute.
Yeah. That was
there's all sorts of other TV, because it's funny because I think, when you think of TV, you just think of like sitcoms instead of rom-coms, and then within that there are, love story arcs that come and go season and whatever, because it's a different format and it's different. You like with that formulaic thing of a rom-com, you have like by the end of the movie they're together, or but when you have multiple shows, and then there's ones that just continue with all sorts of things, like Sex and the City is all about all of these different up and down.
That's definitely comedy.
It's definitely comedy.
Say it's romantic?
There's even like longer storylines and shorter ones, and but there's a lot of there's a lot of shows that have that like continuous arc. There's like How I Met Your Mother and things like that, where the kind of the purpose of it is that romantic coming together.
What was that meet cute?
Yeah. Right, exactly. As long as there's a meet cute in it and a resolution, I don't know. So I think it's interesting that I'm trying to think about it a little bit more, and I was trying to like open my brain up to what are shows that I would consider rom-coms now, instead of just like a cute series. Like where am I jamming those in that Venn diagram?
It can't be its own special, right? Like there's Christmas specials, there's Halloween specials.
Well, why not? It could be.
But a rom-com special is going to be interesting if it's within a television
There's a space
show.
on that monster Venn diagram for that.
All right, I'll let Ryan Murphy figure that out.
Exactly.
All right, well, let's circle back. We talked about some of the favorite movies. I want to talk about who do you consider your rom-com leading ladies and rom-com leading men? Do you have any favorites there?
Well, some of those are going to date us because it's sort of like the eras that you watched the most.
I wasn't going to go there on that, Candice, but now that you mentioned it, yes.
I mean, there's a variety, I mean, I try to span different decades. I mean, I actually really liked some of those originals, like All About Eve and, Barbara what's her name? Stanwyck. Yeah. So those I like in that era, but there was, I think was coming up a little in the like Meg Ryan era, but then, getting older in the, Julia Roberts, Sandra Bullock, Kate Hudson kind of era, Katherine Heigl,
27 Dresses. Did that?
Yeah.
Right?
Those. But then there's also
directed by a woman. 27 Dresses was.
Oh, nice.
That's it.
Yeah, Anne Fletcher, I think, was the director on that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, and then there's also the leading men. Like you would think of like the Hugh Grant era, and for a while it was like just Hugh Grant.
That's true.
Right. I'm like trying to think of others right now, but I know there's a few that we even mentioned.
Yeah, he did Notting Hill, Love Actually, Four Weddings and a Funeral. Yeah, never mind.
And I feel like he hated his rom-coms too. But then they said Bridget Jones's Diary, which is actually quite well done and is based on Jane Austen. But they were saying he's so close to his character, which is like kind of the villain, than any of his other characters. And you're like, really? It's pretty funny.
Yeah. Well, he's been talking about sort of his rom-com era in some of the press he's been doing recently for like Heretic and things like that. Other things that movies we know Tara's gonna watch. Yeah.
I just watched it and I was like, good job. Good job. Tina.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then there are in those crossover genres. Another one that I thought was really cute was Warm Bodies, which is sort of a zombie rom-com.
Yeah,
and that is one of the zom rom-coms or whatever.
Yeah, that was a sweet
I have
one.
not watched that. No.
Which
That's not me.
which leading people do you guys associate with the
I
genre?
don't know.
I would say Doris Day and Rock Hudson, Lover Come
That's a
Back.
good one.
That's a good one. If you haven't, not familiar with that, that's a good one. Legally Blonde. With
Reese
Witherspoon.
Witherspoon. Yeah.
And there's that really funny comment at one point. She says to him, I'm a blonde. People don't take me seriously. And she says, oh, you have more power than you think. And she goes, And then the Luke Wilson character says, how do you think I would look as a blonde? And she says, I don't think you can handle it. And then meanwhile, Luke Wilson has his brother, Owen, who is a blonde.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. And I just thought,
That's funny.
that's that little blip of chat right there, it just makes you laugh because in reality, what the reality is. But I would put When Harry Met Sally is one of my favorites. But again, it gets back to
classic.
that. There's that scene, there's a classic scene, where they're on the phone and they're watching together on the phone. They're watching.
I love that.
Ingrid Bergman and Casablanca, and they're talking about, and he says to her, now there's Ingrid Bergman. She's a high maintenance woman. And then and she says, what do you mean? He goes, well, there's high maintenance women. There's low maintenance women. He goes, she goes, which one am I? And he says, oh, you're high maintenance because you want everything on the side.
No. He said you're the worst kind. You're high maintenance, but you think you're low maintenance.
Oh, yeah, that's it. That's it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That also only works because it's Billy Crystal.
Right. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that's, there's also the really great lines that you get from these different films. Like that one has the, at the very end, sorry to spoil it for people, but that when you realize you want to spend the rest of your life with someone, you want the rest of your life to start as soon as possible. And like things like that that really stand out, just like you have in the Tom Cruise, Renee Zellweger, Jerry Maguire, you have the like, you complete me, and all these lines that become you complete me, Tara.
I thought it was you had me at hello.
Well, there's you had me at hello
line.
in that as well, and then you complete me. So there's both.
Okay.
There's both in that movie. But yeah,
is that a rom-com though? Or you're just saying that that's in line?
Yeah, no, it has that rom-com element, of course. And then there's also
and the Cuban Gooding Jr. in there is going, show me, Tom Cruise has to shout to him, show me the money.
But another great line that's from a rom-com as well with Jack Nicholson and Helen Hunt is when he like says you make me want to be a better man because he like stops taking his meds. And so anyway, there's like really good lines that come from these films, and you kind of, it's like a great line in a song or something.
As Good As It Gets.
As Good As It Gets was great.
I liked it, but it wasn't like, wow, so.
I know, that's what I thought.
Yeah, but I wanted to give a shout out to Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman, but she was also in Runaway Bride.
She was a darling of all of these, yeah.
Right, she's another darling, and Runaway Bride was actually shot here in Maryland, so shout out to the Maryland Film Office.
Look at that.
Because when she's riding across on the horse, that was shot, I think it was Hartford County, which is north of Baltimore. So a lot of those scenes take place in Maryland. So
yeah, there's also the big house that they go to in Wedding Crashers is in this area as well.
Right, that's on the other side of the bridge, I think.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's
and Wedding Crashers has some romantic
great
elements too.
Yeah, it has some.
But
great lines.
there's all love stories in them. So.
We're going to wrap soon, but there's a few more things I wanted to mention for 2024 that came out this year. A foreign film. It's from Kuwait. It's a Kuwaiti foreign film. It's called Honeymoonish. And it's apparently this couple meets the week before. They have 1 week before they get married. It's kind of like an arranged marriage. Is this a film where opposites attract and it's going to work out or not? So I saw the trailer for it. So I recommend that. And then for 2020.
Based on the trailer only? Or have you seen it?
Based on the trailer only.
Okay.
So I recommend that. For 2025, there's a film coming out. It's kind of a remake of The Wedding Banquet by Ang Lee. And that film, The Wedding Banquet, was done in 1993. And that film for 2025, the remake has Bowen Yang from Saturday Night Live,
Mhm.
and it
Awesome.
has Lily Gladstone, Oscar
okay.
winner Lily Gladstone. So Bowen Yang and his boyfriend, and then there's Lily Gladstone and her girlfriend, and a green card is involved. There's IVF treatments involved, and then suddenly the grandmother from South Korea comes to America.
Wow.
So that
Green Card is
that-
also a rom-com from back in the day that I
Oh
was kidding,
yeah, that's right.
with Gerard Depardieu.
That's right.
And doesn't that also had Andy McDowell in it, right? Like
Right, who was in
she also did quite
Groundhog
a lot.
Day.
And
she was
Four Weddings and a
darling.
Funeral.
Right, right.
Yeah, Groundhog
yes.
Day, great, another one of the greats, I think.
Yeah, Bill Murray is such a curmudgeon. That's another
Yeah.
good one. Yeah. No,
There's just so many. It's one of those things where, yeah, the more you talk about it, you're like, oh, and then that one, and that one's good. You were saying, Sandra, it was hard for you to narrow it down because of that, and that's so true. It's like you can pick a genre, you can pick a decade, you could pick an actor, you can pick whatever, and it's just there's so many within the because so many get made of the rom-com genre, and they're so. I mean, I know Tara disagrees, but they're so like satisfying because they're usually pretty easy to. It's like you can't mess up the cookies as much, that's what I'm saying. Like it's pretty easy to make a chocolate chip cookie, right? You can burn them, you can definitely mess them up. There are definitely horrible rom-coms, unfortunately, but there's so many great ones, and it's just such a nice
anything with
fluffy treat.
Colin Firth. I have a huge crush on Colin Firth. So that gets at Brit speaking. We talked about Bridget Jones earlier. So there's Bridget Jones. There's going to be for 2025 about the boy,
so
but
excited.
unfortunately, spoiler alert. Colin Firth is not in it because Mr. Darcy has passed away.
He's
So-
in it, but the actor's in it. But yes, the character is dead because the writer,
Yeah,
her real life
Sandra, you
husband
scared
died.
people right there, thinking that Colin Firth had
And Hugh
passed,
Grant's
but yeah.
back. It's so funny.
Speaking of Hugh Grant, right.
The trailer looks so good.
Anything else that you guys want to talk about? Rom-coms you want to share? You want?
I wanted to. What is that film that had Glenn? What was his name? Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney.
Yeah.
Anyone but you. Thank you, Brandon. And everyone is like, they were really clapping, like, what do you call it? Like, they were really like, we're bringing back the rom-com. I'm like, it never died, weirdos.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
And I did like it, but I didn't know that it was based on Much Ado About Nothing, which is my favorite Shakespeare play. So
And you
while I
couldn't
was
tell?
watching it, while I couldn't tell from the trailer. So I went and watched the film, and I'm like, it's like the beginning of Much Ado. Wait a minute. And there's a cookie involved in a couple of scenes, but
a
watched it, I was
literal,
like,
not a metaphorical one. Yeah.
yes, there's like an actual cookie.
Yeah.
But that was a fun one. What annoyed me is like the PR stunt, and sometimes that could backfire.
Mhm.
Sometimes, but that was fun.
Yeah, I mean,
Candice, do you have any final thoughts here about this? The romantic comedies in for Valentine's Day.
I mean, just that I'm gonna keep watching them because, and it depends on also sometimes like. If you like the leads, it's you get to play out that little fantasy or and they throw the audiences the bones. They'll do like, thirst trap scenes and stuff. So, which it's fine. I think it's a cute, necessary genre. To me, I think it's like a step above like the equivalent in TV of the soap opera, where a lot of actors sort of like cut their teeth and there's a lot of people that do those types. But yeah, I mean, I think it's probably harder than people give it credit for to be light and fluffy and entertaining and different and sort of land the plane in a slightly satisfyingly different way. But yeah, I don't know. To me, I guess my final thought is they're the cookie of the movie world, and
That's
I
a
like
great
dessert.
tagline.
So yeah.
If we made T-shirts, that's the T-shirt.
Right, rom-coms, the cookie of the movie world.
And I like dessert.
And for all our listeners, we want to hear from you. Give us feedback on what's your favorite romantic comedy and favorite romantic comedy leading man or woman. You can email us at podcast@wifv.org. That's podcast@wif.org with your opinion. And Candice, anything else that you want to plug on where people can find Media Maker Spotlight?
Well, you can always find us through wif.org, the main website for women in film and video. And we have our own show website as well, which is mediamakerspotlight.com. And we also have our YouTube channel, so you can watch us there. And you can see how we dressed for the occasion in classic Valentine's colors. I'm wearing a heart necklace and everything. So,
makeup.
We're leaning into the cheesy because why not? It's fun, right?
Yeah.
I say do more things that make you smile and celebrate love. So keep making rom-coms. I'll keep watching them. And I will keep watching all the action and horror and thriller and sci-fi and horror and all that stuff too, because it's the whole human experience. So anyway, but also we love you, our listeners. Speaking of love, and just want to wish you all a very happy Valentine's Day.
Well, thank you for joining Media Maker Spotlight Host Special. Have a wonderful Valentine's Day.
Thanks for listening to Media Maker Spotlight from Women in Film and Video. To learn more about WIF, visit F as in Frank, V as in Victor.org. This podcast is created by Sandra Abrams, Candice Block, Brandon Ferry, Tara Jabari, and Jerry Reinhardt, and edited by Michelle Kim and Inez Perez, with audio production and mix by Steve Lack Audio. Subscribe to continue learning from more amazing media makers. Please visit MediaMakerSpotlight.com for more information.